Welcome to Microdose Psychedelic Insights, powered by the Conscious Fund. This is the PsyFi series, discovering the cutting-edge science and research in psychedelic medicine.
Welcome back, everybody. We're back for another great episode of the PsyFi podcast, where we talk to leading industry experts, clinicians, scientists, researchers to unravel the mystery that is psychedelic science. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Carlos Alvear-Lopez of Inscape Recovery. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Yeah, so I know we know each other really well, but it'd be fantastic for our audience if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I'm a medical doctor that been practicing since 20 years ago. I've moved to the farmlands of the valley in Mexico when I finished med school to do my practice there. And I started working with herbal medicines around 2003, and then was completely passionate about the capacity of the herbal world to support our health. And in 2012, we started working in a program to help addiction with some other facilitators. And since then, we've had on and off programs to support addiction recovery. And from 5 years ago, I started the project called Neurotropy, which is how to balance neurotransmission through nutrition, which also is aimed to support addiction recovery and other emotional distress people. No, so that's basically what we do in our project and in our program in Mexico.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and you bring up a lot of cool points I want to touch on. The fact that you work with different herbal medicines, you work with psychedelic medicine as well, the ayahuasca and the neurotransmission. I think you have a really holistic and targeted approach, for helping people with addiction. So I'd love for you to just explain to us how you got involved with working with herbal medicine and then, psychotropic plants like ayahuasca in the first place.
Yeah, so I guess I've been a searcher since my early youth, trying to understand my own psyche and creation itself. So I started at a young age researching into altered state of consciousness without taking any substances. I took my first LSD experience at 21 years of age when I was in second year of med school. So previously it was only researching and reading and, the classical doors of perception and the work of the old school, then back with Terence McKenna and until my first experience. And when I had that experience, I basically realized that there was a completely different way to approach consciousness and to approach the psyche, and that just took me on a travel towards my inner realms. I met a wonderful healer from the Wirrárica Huichol tradition named Casiano, who basically spent many years of his life working with us at our farm, giving peyote medicine. So it's been a long process of engaging with the plant kingdom and the sacred plants. And with the ayahuasca, I'm not a provider of ayahuasca. I'm just a complete believer of its effects. We have someone that's trained that serves the medicine at our facility, and I am basically one more of the participants that engages in the integration of the plant medicine and then working with the plant medicine within myself. And what basically has shifted a lot of the understanding of plant medicine and neurotransmission for me is to understand where is the patient or the participant before engaging with the plant medicine in their neurotransmission. So we are starting to make different tests to understand the levels of different neurotransmitters. So basically dopamine, neuropinephrine, serotonin, GABA, and acetylcholine by understanding the traits of the participants, and in some cases using different blood panels to assess them. And understanding this and having a pre-image of how their brain is functioning, we can have more control over the experience of the plant medicine, with reducing the effects of possible psychotic events, or of actually people not being able to engage with the plant medicine because they're completely off their neurotransmission. So this has brought an added value to the way we approach the use of plant medicine and the addiction recovery program.
Oh, that's really fascinating. It's interesting talking to different people throughout recording this podcast and hearing them talk about their own experiences with psychedelics and kind of how that shaped their journey. And it'd be interesting if you'd be willing to share a little bit about your experience with LSD in medical school, and maybe how that shaped your perspective on consciousness altering drugs and their therapeutic potential.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was giving the substance without knowing that it was LSD.
Wow.
Someone played a bit of a bad joke. So I was in an enclosed. It was I don't know how you call it, like a techno music place, no, and it was the birthday of one of my peers, and someone said, okay, we're going to celebrate, and we brought MDMA to experience. And I've never tried anything, but I had read on MDMA, and I had read on its effects, and I said, okay, it's, yeah, I'm willing to take the experience. And so they gave me the substance, and maybe within 15 or 20 minutes, I wanted to go to the toilet. And so I went into the toilet. And as I closed the door of the toilet, it was an actual glass, like mirror. And it had a concave shape. It was like a cylinder, the toilet. It was quite weird. But in the actual mirror, suddenly I saw, the devil surrounded by all these beautiful women. And I could realize that obviously this was not MDMA, but I was completely in a place where I could only understand that there was some other substance in the cocktail, or in what they gave me. And then the devil said, okay, you can ask me anything you want, I will provide. And I said, I just want to have a shit, just get out of my sight. And basically, I emptied my bowels, opened washed my face, and could definitely start to feel, the changes in my body, in some sweating in the hands, the classical symptoms of the incoming experience of LSD. When I opened the door, I was just mesmerized by all the entities that were non-human, and that so it was like a trip to the really dark, the deep unconscious. And my way to cope with this was basically get out of my body. So my consciousness moved out of my body, and suddenly I just saw myself in a fetal position, on the middle of the dance floor. And I could just observe the whole scenario and understand that I was at risk there. So I managed to go back into my physical body, move myself out of the place, and find a little corner where I was just trying to experience what I had to experience. And fortunately, one of my friends that was not within this experience, that had not taken anything, saw me in distress. And I said, please take me back home. And as I arrived back home, I used to live in a beautiful part of Mexico City where I was on a small hill that overlooked to the valley, and the volcanoes were at the end of the valley. And as the sunrise started to emerge, there was the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven playing, and exactly in the moment where the joy, the hymn to joy started, in that specific instant, the sun came in the middle of the two volcanoes, and I just could feel grace for the first time in my life. I could feel the presence of the divine, which I had searched for in many, many ways through my intellect, but had never actually, been a complete witness where I was completely embedded in its grace, in its magic, and its love. And that was just a turning point in my life, but understanding, the creation in another way, and deepening into my own personal search. So I guess that resumes my experience.
Wow, that's quite a story. Thanks for sharing. I heard a very distilled version of that, I think, from Joey once,
Yeah.
So now to hear the whole account from you, that's so super interesting. Are you grateful for the experience in the end? It certainly was unexpected and
Yeah,
quite frankly, a little terrifying at the beginning.
I'm grateful. I did not trust that person ever again. And I think it's not a good joke. And I think
Right.
one should be extremely respectful of the power of these medicines. And it's not a party. Even though people use it for that, it has a completely other reason for existence, and it's definitely to go inward. So if that can be conveyed to anyone, is that do not play tricks with these powerful substances on anyone's psyche.
Yeah, absolutely. That one of the biggest things that stuck out to me from your story was definitely the theme of harm reduction. That was obviously very irresponsible of that person, but yeah, in the end,
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you had a
I'm
very
super
powerful and
grateful of the experience, but it would have happened in some other
right.
way also, no?
Yeah,
So
of course.
I just think the minimizing risk is essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about how these medicines or these drugs are kind of used in more than one context. Of course, today we're sitting here today talking about psychedelics as medicine, but for a long time they've also been used in a recreational context. So, as a medical doctor that understands the power of these substances, I'm curious what your thoughts are for people that do believe psychedelics have a recreational value or can be used for fun, and how that kind of fits into the paradigm of them being used for healing. If you believe maybe it's harmful for people to use it like that, or if there is a place for that alongside it as medicine.
So I think we cannot generalize anything in life, no, and everything is in relation to where you're at the moment, and how is your psyche, if it's stable, if it's not stable, what are you going through in your life, where are you, with who are you in a place where you can trust the others, are you in a place where the actual space is a place that can contain your experience, and I've used substances in both ways, in the party place and in deeper exploration of myself, and I can definitely convey that I believe that the way is to experience them first in that sense of depth, in that contained space, learn to experience that space within, so that then you can be more comfortable to experience it on a more open space where there's many more elements that you don't have control over, no? So I think we should always look for ways to minimize the risk of using these substances, and that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that's really good insight. Thank you for sharing that. It'd be great if you could share a little bit about, your work in the space. And I know you talked about the program using, the neurotransmitter understanding and different herbal medicines and entheogenic plants as well, and treating addiction. So if you could describe that process a little bit more, that'd be fantastic.
So basically, we use a test that observes traits and personality traits that have some correlation to neurotransmission unbalance, and through different methylation process, and we approach the patients or the participants using a method that's developed by Dr. Walsh, who has a long history of mapping the brain through traits and then giving nutritional supplements to balance the brain. So that's the first thing we do. And then we start a protocol of detoxifying the liver through herbal supplementation and through different Ayurveda massage that help liberate toxins through the lymphatic system. And we start to assess the deficiencies within their brain by supplementing specific neurotransmitters that we see that are off the charts. And once this process is stabilized, it takes around 2 weeks, then we suggest the first intake of plant medicine. Prior to this, we also treat the participant on a more of a shamanic process, using purges from the tradition of the Amazonia, and using a traditional healer to do a cleanse. We do different types of cleanses so that we also treat the energetic body, not only the biological body, not only the psychic element, but also the energetic connections that in many cases, people that have been with the abuse of substances have also been exposed to extremely disruptive energies, and this is also treated within our program, which it's rare to find this in other programs, and once they enter the process, once we see that they're stable, we start the plant medicine work using ayahuasca, or in some cases we receive participants that have come from iboga immersion, and we do the aftercare. We help them integrate their experience, and through the process, after 2 or 3 weeks of being with us, we then provide ayahuasca to have a continuum of that experience. And in some cases, we use also the hikuri, the peyote, to help the process, depending on the participant, depending on the circumstance. So it's always related on what the participant needs to be able to foster the best contained and sustained healing process.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It's a really personalized and tailored, treatment program. And I think that's reflective of psychedelic medicine as a whole, because it's so, I think it's the quintessential personalized medicine in the sense that, the way it affects different people is so unique. And it seems like these medicines, when used in the right context and with, in the right set and setting and with the right professionals, can really be more versatile than the traditional medications we have been using for things like depression and addiction. And that kind of leads me to my next question is, what are some of the ways your treatment program and the way you approach addiction is different than the traditional model? And I know you touched on some of those things, but it'd be great if you could elaborate a little bit more, because I think it's so unique what you do,
So our first element is to realign the scope of where we're seeing. What we're seeing is, rather than observe only the addiction, is observe the capacity to sustain the consciousness of the self, of the deeper understanding of each other. And so most of our activities are to bring back the participant to the experience of themselves, and not to solidify so much the quality or the experience of addiction. That's already there. That's already been overly expressed, overly explored, overly judged, and what we try to do at all moments is stop the judgment, to understand that no one wakes up one day wanting to become an addict. Everyone becomes an addict out of some form of trying to find a solution to their inner turmoil. So we take that as quite an inner exploration, and a sense of wholeness, just using the incorrect tools, and going into a downward spiral because they're trying to find a place of peace or of ease. So shifting to new resources, new tools, but staying with the same longing for wholeness, longing for peace, longing for oneness is what drives our protocols. No, so we use a very integrated model with different facilitators that each one has a specific way of sharing this space of compassion and the space of trust and space of non-judgment, so that the participant can feel accepted, and by feeling accepted can actually accept themselves.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that, what you said about feeling accepted, because I was talking to, you might know Anders Beatty. He does the ibogaine counseling with Universal Ibogaine, and he talked about the core of addiction. Really, I think Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this too. This being, trying to be an inauthentic self, or trying to find authenticity, in that challenge that some of us have as people struggling with addiction. That's really at the core of it. And I think self-acceptance and really radical self-acceptance and the entheogenic plants really help promote that acceptance within ourselves. So I think that's really cool. Obviously, the addiction treatment space, the mental health space has evolved a lot, in the last 5 or 10 years. And since you began working in it, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen, and what are you most excited about?
Well, I think that for sure we've seen the power of plant medicine work miracles in patients that have, depression that was not being able to be treated chemically, or victims of abuse that had PTSD, that with the use of an entheogen can suddenly reconnect and release their pain, and are able to reconnect to their partners and heal their wounds related to sexual abuse. And these are subjects that cannot be taken for granted. These are situations that, using other methods, you do not reach the depth and the capacity of transformation that you reach with these substances. And it's not new that we've used psychoactive plants for healing. It's been within our upbringing as humanity. The Greeks used them, through the Eleusinian rites of passage, where they actually took the plants to engage in processes of healing. And the same happened with the Mayas, and the same happened, I'm sure, with the Soma of India, and the same is for the natural cultures here in Mexico of the Wirrárica Huichol or the Mazatec Indians who use the magic mushrooms also for healing. So it's not new. We're just recognizing it and being humbled by them, and seeing that they have an actual place within our Western model of therapeutics.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's not new medicine at all. It's us reconnecting to our roots in so many ways. And I think that's a really good point you bring up. So you're in Mexico right now, and we had the pleasure of connecting with you, the Microdose team, for our documentary, The World on Drugs. And it's really interesting because Mexico has been one of the hardest hit countries by the war on drugs. But at the same time, it's become this hub, probably because so many people are starting to reconnect to those roots that are so deep there of plant medicine and from the indigenous cultures and healing. So I'd love for you to just comment a little bit about Inscape Recovery is in Mexico. So how do you like being there, and just what's Mexico's role in all of this? Because I definitely think it's an important one, on the global scale.
Well, I think it's a hard question to reply to. Well, first of all, of course, I love the valley where we're in. It's a beautiful small valley with a very low density of population, with an incredible weather, with an old tradition of an ancient shrine for the Aztec priests to do their last rite of passage. So it has that mystical quality within the field, of consciousness that I'm sure it helps. And on that regards, we're very, very lucky to be here, very blessed. We grow our own medicinal plants. We cultivate them with love and without pesticides, so we can secure the quality of the products to our participants, our clients. So in that turn, we're very happy with what we've coined till now. In relation to the bigger picture of why Mexico is being a hub to all these programs and clinics, I think it's kind to do with the low enforcement that there is, because unfortunately these are still illegal, and yet there are shades, and there are gray areas where plant medicine is being used, and I say unfortunately because it would be amazing that it would be regulated and legalized, and that the clinics would have forms of securing the experience for whoever is searching for them, so that they don't get an underqualified facilitator that puts into risk their experience, which also tends to happen when there is no regulation. So I think that's where the difficulty to answer the question is because it's not only because we have a long history. I think it's because the law is not as strong.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you bring up, and that brings me to my next point as well, talking about the evolution of the space and where it's kind of going in the future. I know at our next Psychedelic Capital Conference, we're trying to look at the 3 different possible modes of psychedelics being integrated into the mainstream, be it legalization, decriminalization, or medicalization. And you brought up a really good point about the fact that it's not just about making these substances more accessible, there also needs to be some form of regulation so that people providing them are competent and trained, in doing so. So how do you see, what's the best case scenario for moving forward, in your opinion, with the regulation of these entheogenic plants and maybe just drugs at large?
I think there are 2 avenues. One is the recreational use, that one should be allowed to use any plant for their own healing purposes, being responsible for what they do and not depending on others. And that's one line. And then the second one line is whoever is the provider. What is the regulation of what? If you're offering a process, then who regulates that you are doing it properly? Who regulates the quality of the plant? Who regulates the security of the protocols? And so I think that there are these 2 lines that need to be explored and that needs to be regulated eventually.
Yeah, when we talk about safety, I want to touch a little bit more on the ayahuasca. And, you guys go through an incredible amount to ensure that all the patients at Inscape are safe throughout their entire process. And ayahuasca is obviously considered very safe entheogen. But of course, there's the potential interaction since you consume an MAOI. People on antidepressants or medications like that have to be very wary. So how do you approach people that might come to you that are on these types of medications, and maybe more generally, how do you ensure the safety of all your patients there?
Yeah, so even before they arrive, we do an assessment. We know people need to trust, and by trusting, they need to be truthful. So to what they're using and the amounts. So we start a winning off process before they arrive, so that by the second week that they're with us, we've already winned them off the whatever substance that is non-compatible. So basically, emails and serotonin reuptakers. So we stabilize as much as we can through nutrition of the brain their symptoms, and then they can engage. And we also do liver panel. When they are going into Iboga through the other providers, we make sure that they have an EKG done and check the blood works to be secure that they can cope with the experience and that their health will not be placed at risk.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's really good to know. When you talk about the neurotransmission, I think that's a really interesting and another unique element of your practice. What got you into incorporating that into the treatment program? And I know that you're just really passionate about the neurotransmission stuff. So any more notes that you would have to share on that would be really cool.
So I guess I'm always experiencing with substance from nature, and trying. I formulate the herbal formulas for our patients, and so I've always been mesmerized by new things that arise, or by a formula that's 5,000 years old from the Chinese era, or an Ayurveda product for longevity. I will try it in myself, and I will see, what works, what doesn't, and then try to bring it into my practice. And doing this research, I started to work with nootropics and different salts that were created to access different areas of the brain, which they do it by enhancing different neurotransmitters to basically help with cognition, with cognitive functions, whether it be memory or attention or sleeping disorder or anxiety. And at the same time I was working with this, I had a teacher in Vancouver that was also working with this. And I didn't know about this, but he invited me over to his home, and we spent a holiday there. And we realized that we were searching for different states of awareness. Me more to provide a source of prevention to Alzheimer and dementia, and for him, he was looking for cognitive enhancement and consciousness enhancement. He's a meditation teacher, so we decided to research together and to come up with a formula that could help both areas to enhance consciousness by enhancing basically the process of interconnection of neurons, and at the same time be a supplement that could support prevention of dementia. And this was the first steps of how we created this model of neurotropy. And along the way, we realized that there were actual plants that we did not need to use the salts, the chemical salts, that we could actually use plants and amino acids and vitamins and minerals that would enhance each of the neurotransmitters that we wanted to enrich, that we saw in participants or patients that they were out of balance, that they were in depletion. And that's basically what we've been doing along the way. And then came another researcher, which is Dr. Walsh, that he goes more into the epigenetics of neurotransmission. And that's where I'm right now hooked into understanding what are the other factors that might be pushing your genes to act differently and to make havoc within your neurotransmission, and how to support the process through nutrition, so that you can balance your psychological well-being and your psychic well-being back to your full self.
Yeah, that's really cool. Something that stuck out to me was you incorporate new things into your practice. In some cases, we're looking back, in time to see what in a formula in Ayurvedic medicine or old Chinese medicine that might have been really effective, which is so similar to kind of how psychedelic medicine is getting reintegrated back into society. Is we're kind of looking backward to find the way forward, Yeah. And I think that's really cool.
And I think something that's critical is that we need to understand that we sometimes decontextualize the plant medicine. The plant medicine is a continuum of a tradition. It's not only the ayahuasca, or no, not only the peyote, but it's the belief within it, the inner social dynamics that sustains the practice, the inner forms of dialogue that sustain the inner connections in between the culture or the tribe. And as Westerners, we assume that by only taking the molecule, by only taking the substance, that's enough. And I think that's one of the huge risks that I see coming up when we try to idealize the substance, take it out of context, and assume that the substance in itself will be the healing antidote. I think that there is a huge risk of that happening, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to create the protocols and create the rituals that come together with these plants, and not forget that there is a whole tradition behind them that have made the plant be what it is. And it's the correlation, I mean, the existence of the plant and the existence of that culture that brings the healing. No, it's not only the molecule. It's a deeper process.
Yeah, that's so true. I really like how you said that, about how there's, about bringing it back into the context it came from, because you're right, as Westerners, that's our temptation, is to try and take these medicines and apply them to the same paradigm we've been using with pharmaceutical drugs, and it just doesn't work that way. And I think it's important to be mindful of that. Another cool thing you said that came to mind was kind of this continuum, like we can help people get from, I think, the old paradigm and maybe medication-assisted therapy, stuff like methadone, buprenorphine, they can help someone go from a really bad place, and the idea is to try and really get them to something like normal, But the cool thing with psychedelic medicine is that it seems to offer people the possibility, and not just psychedelic medicine, but a treatment protocol like you're suggesting that's more holistic, that includes things like meditation, to go way past what we thought was normal and unlock capabilities within ourselves that we didn't even know maybe that we had or we were capable of, which to me has always been one of the interesting blessings of, I think, addiction and addiction treatment, is that it offers people the ability to unlock so much more of themselves, whereas when you're in active addiction, especially, or what you feel is possible, it becomes very limited, So outside of the ayahuasca and or maybe the peyote and the plant medicine and maybe the neurotransmission, what are some of the other activities and practices you guys do at Inscape to facilitate, taking these medicines and providing the whole healing context?
So breathing, the awareness of your breath, as simple as that, no? Just doing over and over and over exercises of realizing where are you in relation to your breath, where are you in relation to your diaphragm, where are you in relation to holding tension in your body. So body awareness, definitely. And then meditation, we use different types of meditation so that the participants can take home a full toolbox of tools to use in the different stages and the different needs in their lives, no? And then we do art therapy as a form of expression and letting elements of the unconscious emerge through the expression of art. We use echinotherapy, working with horses and seeing how the horses relate to you depending on what's your mood, what are you thinking. Are you agitated? Does the horse respond when you are agitated? Are you finding trust within the horse? Is the horse trusting you? Which is of huge value to just have a feedback, from an other being. Then we also work with a process called Jansu, which is a massage in the water to bring you back into a sense of being in the womb. Which also taps very deep into an emotional state. Then we do acupuncture as part of balancing the energetic system and balancing the meridians. We do drum circles as part of creating a place of communicating in other ways and finding your own rhythm and your own relationship to sound. and we do walks in nature 2 days of the week. We go deep into nature to connect and to do eco psychology, to see how we relate to nature, how nature relates to us, how do we create this differentiation between nature and ourselves, how can we break that differentiation and find that we are nature in itself. I guess that's about it. Maybe that's something that you might remember from your being in the program. I think
something I forgot to tell our listeners is that I've been to the program at Inscape, and it was such a pleasure being there, and it was obviously very life-changing and radical and groundbreaking for me. So it's an extra honor to have you on, as a guest on the podcast. Other things I would mention are the flotation tank and the technologies that you guys have. They're awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So we have an array of different technologies for health, from a flotation tank to a jade mat bed to an organ chamber. To an inversion table when people have issues with their backs, with infrared light, just to support the kidneys and support the back. We have a jade roller massage to help and lengthen and stretch vertebra by vertebra. We have a biofeedback machine to help address different wavelengths of the brain, so to help balance through the morning moods and through the evening moods. I forgot all about those toys.
That's really awesome.
They're there at the service of the participants.
Yeah, I'm already really excited to come back again in December, and that's something I wanted to bring up. Is it's really cool, the community that you form and that we form with other participants in the program, and you have these alumni retreats, which I think are really cool. And I think that ties into a question I wanted to ask you is, how has it been going in your opinion with the people that you've been working with, the patients you've been working with, and applying such a robust and comprehensive treatment approach? In your opinion, how is it going? And has it been really great to, see people come back for the retreats? And are you looking to optimize the program in any way? And, looking forward, what are your plans?
So I think that the alumni retreat holds a lot of richness, because it gives a space for the participants to come back and share how they are, how's life been. They get to reboost their process. They had to repractice the techniques and go back into the plant medicine work. They get to reconnect with old peers and create new friends and establish this network that will sustain their process of the recovery outside our premises. And to find like-minded, like-hearted individuals that will be there to listen, will be there to stretch a hand, will be there to not only have the idea of a community, but the actual feeling of a community. And I think that has an enormous value.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of the rat park experiment that's so classic to addiction. And just to not summarize it, but just talk about the fact that a community and feeling connected to each other is so important for people, especially that are in recovery. And I think that's really important. I wanted to ask you, as we kind of come to an end here, we were talking about, there were a couple of things that came to mind. You were talking about epigenetics. And I thought that was really interesting, because we talked about going backwards and looking at the indigenous cultures and traditions to kind of formulate our approach moving forward. And like with the Temescal, we always go into the Temescal and we say, for all my relations, and we talk about how we can carry kind of on a mystical or spiritual level. We talk about how we can carry these traumas from our parents and their parents and our ancestors, but now scientifically we're understanding that mechanism through epigenetics and histone acetylation and methylation. And I think that's so fascinating. If you wanted to talk a little bit about how science is kind of revealing that there's a lot of truth to some of these ancient traditions and their perspectives on things.
So I think there is a difference in between the genetic traits that are passed on through the epigenetic processes that are due to or exposure to chemicals or type of diet, the electromagnetic fields, the lack of antioxidants within our systems that will trigger this epigenetic process that will make the gene express or overexpress or underexpress, and thus producing certain traits that are related to the neurotransmission unbalances. No, and I think that we are just tapping into this realm. We are having some forms of understanding, some forms of measuring, some forms of regulating, but we are definitely in our teenage years. There is so much research that still needs to happen, and if someone is interested in following, I think Dr. Walsh research is quite mind-blowing, and the passion and dedication that he's put into understanding the nutrition of the brain and understanding how to balance it through very simple protocols based on nutrition, on what he calls power nutrients. So I think that I'm not in that place of expertise to dwell. I'm just being immersed in this realm, and maybe in a couple of years I can answer to the full extent of the question. Right now I'm just peeping through.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And speaking of a couple of years from now, what are some of the other things you're maybe considering adding to the program, or optimizing, or maybe removing? One of the things that comes to mind is, I know that ayahuasca can be difficult to obtain or source, because it's maybe not as sustainable a plant medicine as something like psilocybin, for example. Is that going to affect your treatment protocol? Do you think you might have to switch to something like psilocybin, or change up the way that you approach this because of sustainability?
So we are already doing protocols of microdosing with psilocybin, and we have a mycologist that is producing the actual mycelium and the actual fruit of the mushroom. So we are getting very high grade psilocybin, and although we are using it for microdosing, we expect to create protocols of immersion. But this is something, as I told you before, I do not. I'm not the one that provides the plant medicine. So that's something that we need to assess with our actual provider. Right now, the provider that we have is trained in the ayahuasca tradition. We will have to find someone that is trained within the Mazatec tradition for holding space, or within CIS, or someone that has the credentials to support a process.
That's fascinating. Well, one of the last questions I had for you before I give you the last word is, as we're going into these ancient cultures and taking their medicines that they've been using since time immemorial and applying it to the modern world, this topic of inclusion comes up a lot, and social equity, and being mindful of the fact that we are taking this from them, and we have to, and we should be mindful and responsible of respecting their culture. So what are some ways a space can be more inclusive, and how can we be mindful of the indigenous people that have helped bring the medicine this far? I feel like we owe a lot to them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that there are definitely organizations that do this, like Nierica. It's an organization that promotes the recognition of the ancient cultures and their work in implementing strategies for psychedelic use in a therapeutic environment. They're really good to research. And then your own personal relationship to these ancient cultures, your acknowledgement every time that you're going to take a plant, that within your capacity to have them present, to share the light onto their cultures, that if you see some fundraising that supports any of these cultures, that you support by giving some of your resources. In our case, when we had the connection to Casiano, we tried to bring him to ceremonies. We try to bring wealth into his community. We took him to South Africa to have an exchange with traditional shamans of South Africa and provide the medicine there. and have an intercultural experience. No, I think that there are infinite ways of acknowledging and providing a sense of respect and of saying, we need you guys, we need your tradition, and we need for you to keep it alive, which is one of the huge risks, is that the traditions are dissolving. Their kids want to become Western, so it is a crisis that we're facing, and we need to see how that's why we gain this knowledge, but we gain it with the whole concept, with the whole understanding of the culture, and not just the use of the molecule, but incorporating that culture within ourselves as much as we can, and as much as we can understand their cosmogony, and how we make ends meet with that cosmogony and our own Western understanding.
Very great insight. Cosmogony. That's a word I'm going to look up later. That's a new one to add to my vocabulary. So I like to give all my guests the last word, a message that you maybe have to share with our audience, just, the world at large, about what you do and what we talked about today. That would be really awesome. The floor is all yours.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Oh, I said I like to give. That's okay. I like to give all my guests, the last word, basically.
My last word.
Yeah, a message you want to share about what we talked about, or just anything you want to end with. The floor is yours.
Just we this process is eternal. It's infinite, and we will be passing through inner explorations always, and to not be distracted from the capacity to regain our center every time that we're off of it. That being off of it is the possibility to regaining it. And to trust that there is a consciousness that sustains us, and that there is love within this consciousness, and that we're not all alone in this process. That we have a field of awareness that's emerging. We have each other, and that we need to trust life, and that life is the best answer to follow life within us, and that through that process we will come up with the solutions to our distress.
That's awesome. That was probably one of the best last words I've ever had on my podcast before. What an amazing message. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Carlos. I really appreciate it. It's always such a pleasure to connect with you. I'll be seeing you in a few short weeks. I really look forward to it. And to all our listeners, this is another great episode of the PsyFi podcast, where we talk to leading industry experts, clinicians, and scientists to unravel the mystery of psychedelic science. I was joined today by Dr. Carlos Alvear-Lopez of Inscape Recovery. And thank you so much, and we'll speak with all of you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Sci-Fi series, brought to you by Microdose and the Conscious Fund. Visit our website at www.microdose.buzz.